Britain has just been thrown into the biggest political earthquake of the century. King Charles has done the unthinkable. He has crushed Keir Starmer's government and forced the country into a general election that no one was ready for. This isn't a rumour, this isn't speculation. Multiple palace sources confirm that Charles personally authorised the royal proclamation dissolving Parliament just 1 hour ago. The result? Westminster is in chaos. Party leaders are scrambling, MPs are panicking, and the British public is flooding the streets in celebrations and protests. This is no longer politics. As usual, this is a full-scale national reckoning. Behind the gates of Buckingham Palace, the decision came faster than anyone expected. After weeks of pressure, collapsing public confidence, and calls for royal intervention trending online, Charles finally made his move. At precisely 9 a.m. this morning, the royal household issued an emergency statement invoking the ancient royal prerogative to dissolve Parliament, a power that had not been used directly by the Crown in nearly 200 years. The impact was immediate and explosive. Within minutes, Downing Street confirmed that the Prime Minister had been formally dismissed and that Parliament would stand dissolved until a fresh general election could be held. Government websites were quickly updated with the proclamation, while broadcasters cut into regular programming to carry the announcement live. The reaction across Britain was electric. Crowds gathered outside Westminster, some waving Union Jacks and cheering, others furious and shouting that the king had overstepped his authority. Police were deployed to manage swelling demonstrations in London, Birmingham, and Manchester. Social media exploded. #King Charles, dissolution, and #general election. 2025 were trending globally within half an hour. TikTok videos of crowds chanting "Charles saved Britain" have already passed 20 million views, while rival clips accusing the monarchy of staging a coup are spreading just as fast. What makes this moment so unprecedented is not just the king's decision, but the speed and force with which he acted. Insiders reveal that Starmer was not even given a courtesy warning. He reportedly found out just 10 minutes before the public announcement and was forced to vacate Downing Street under police escort as journalists gathered outside. Witnesses describe Starmer as ashen-faced as he was driven away, refusing to answer shouted questions about whether he would fight the election or step aside. Senior Labour officials are said to be in a state of shock, with one describing the situation as a constitutional ambush, unlike anything we've seen in modern British history. Meanwhile, the palace insists this was not a rash move. Royal sources say Charles had spent the last 72 hours in marathon meetings with constitutional lawyers, senior advisors, and even former judges to ensure the legality of the dissolution was beyond dispute. This was not about politics, it was about duty, one palace insider said. The king acted because public trust in Parliament had completely collapsed, and no one else was willing to act to restore legitimacy. According to polling released just yesterday, only 19% of Britons said they trusted MPs to act in the national interest, the lowest figure ever recorded. Markets reacted instantly. The pound initially tumbled, falling nearly 2% in early trading, but then began to rebound as analysts suggested the king's move could break months of political deadlock and restore stability. Government bond yields, which had been rising, dropped slightly as investors bet on a new government with a fresh mandate to tackle Britain's economic woes. The FTSE 100, which had been down for weeks, rallied in the hours following the announcement, a sign that business leaders may quietly welcome the reset. But the political fallout is far from settled. Starmer's allies are already plotting their response, and there are whispers that Labour will attempt to paint the king's decision as a direct attack on democracy itself. This is dangerous territory, said one former cabinet minister. The monarchy has survived this long because it has stayed above politics. Charles has now taken a side, and that means the monarchy itself will be judged by the outcome of the coming election. The opposition parties, meanwhile, are in celebration mode. Conservative leader Rishi Sunak, who had been struggling to unite his fractured party, immediately called the dissolution a historic chance to give Britain back its voice. Nigel Farage wasted no time either announcing that Reform UK would contest every single seat in England and Wales. "This is the moment we've been waiting for," Farage declared in a viral video already seen over 3 million times. Parliament has been dissolved, the people will finally have their say, and the political establishment is about to be shaken to its core. International reactions have been cautious but intense. The White House issued a brief statement saying it respects the constitutional process of the United Kingdom, but urged peaceful and orderly transition. European leaders are said to be privately stunned, with one Brussels official calling the move Brexit 2.0 a reminder that Britain is willing to rewrite the rules. Financial markets across Europe are watching closely as Britain heads into what could be the most unpredictable election in modern history. What happens next will depend entirely on how the political class responds to this royal intervention and whether the public sees Charles as a hero who saved Britain or a monarch who overstepped his bounds. The next 48 hours will be crucial as party leaders scramble to reorganise their campaigns, form alliances, and convince voters they are ready to govern. For now, Britain stands on the edge of a new political era, one that Charles himself has set into motion. As the dust settled from the King's bombshell proclamation, the real chaos began to unfold inside Westminster. MPs arrived to find Parliament shuttered, their offices locked, and their staff confused about whether they still had jobs. The Speaker of the House issued a terse statement, acknowledging that the King's order had legal force but warning that this was uncharted territory that would require urgent constitutional review. Legal scholars rushed onto television panels to debate the meaning of the moment, some calling it a bold reset of British democracy, others warning it was a dangerous precedent that might permanently damage the monarchy's reputation. What united them all was a single acknowledgement. Britain had entered a political moment unlike anything since the abdication crisis of 1936. Inside Labour headquarters, the atmosphere was described as funereal. Keir Starmer reportedly held an emergency call with his shadow cabinet in which he urged calm, but admitted that the party faced a fight for survival. Senior Labour figures are split on strategy. Some argue they must frame this as an assault on democracy and campaign on defending Parliament from royal interference. Others worry that attacking the King will alienate millions of voters who see him as acting in the public interest. Early focus group data suggests this fear may be justified. Nearly 60% of working-class respondents polled today said they supported Charles's decision and believed Starmer had lost touch with ordinary people. Even within Labour's ranks, rebellion is brewing. Several backbench MPs are reportedly furious that the leadership failed to act sooner to restore public trust and avoid this crisis. Some are already calling for Starmer to resign as party leader before the general election is even scheduled. One insider told reporters, "If Keir goes into this election as leader, we are finished. He is damaged goods and everyone knows it." The Conservative Party, meanwhile, is wasting no time taking advantage of the chaos. Tory HQ has launched what they are calling the Restore Britain campaign, plastering social media with messages praising the King and promising to deliver a government that listens. Nigel Farage is capitalising on the moment with his usual flair. He appeared outside Westminster within hours of the proclamation, waving a copy of the royal order and declaring, "This is the day the people took their country back." His message is resonating online, where Reform UK hashtags are now trending ahead of Labour's. Analysts are warning that the coming election could see a political realignment not witnessed since the post-war era, with traditional party loyalties breaking down and a surge in populist candidates standing for seats across the country. The palace, for its part, is remaining silent after the initial announcement. Charles has not been seen in public since the proclamation, but insiders insist he is monitoring the situation closely from Windsor Castle. Reports suggest he held a private video call with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada and King Willem-Alexander of the Netherlands to discuss the implications for other constitutional monarchies. This international angle is growing in importance. Australian commentators are already speculating about whether this precedent could embolden Governor-General David Hurley to exercise reserve powers if Canberra faces its own parliamentary crisis. Across the Commonwealth, leaders are weighing what Charles's decision means for their own countries. Meanwhile, British media is divided. The BBC's coverage has been notably cautious, stressing constitutional procedure and warning of potential instability. Tabloids, on the other hand, are running with dramatic front pages declaring King saves Britain and Starmer crushed. Opinion columnists are split down the middle, some praising Charles for stepping in where politicians failed, others accusing him of staging a soft coup. The result is a nation that feels as if it has been dropped into the middle of a political thriller, where every hour brings new revelations and new stakes. Economically, the volatility continues. The pound is now staging a modest recovery, but traders warn that the situation remains fragile. Credit rating agencies are placing the UK on negative watch, meaning the country's sovereign debt could be downgraded if the election produces prolonged instability. Business leaders are lobbying for a fast, clear electoral timetable to restore investor confidence. The uncertainty is worse than any single policy, said one CEO of a major bank. Markets can price in a new government, but they cannot price in constitutional chaos. Social media remains the loudest arena of this battle. YouTube channels explaining the royal prerogative are seeing massive subscriber spikes, and live streams outside Buckingham Palace are pulling hundreds of thousands of viewers. TikTok influencers are framing Charles's move as a populist victory against the Westminster elite, while others warn that Britain has just taken its first step toward authoritarian rule. The digital divide is becoming a key factor in shaping public opinion, with younger voters flocking to pro-dissolution content at rates that worry traditional parties. Religious leaders are beginning to weigh in as well. The Archbishop of Canterbury issued a statement urging calm reflection and unity, while reminding the nation that the monarchy has always been a guardian of the Constitution. But privately, sources close to the church suggest deep concern about whether the king's intervention may ultimately backfire if it leads to unrest or violence. Security services are already on high alert after intelligence reports warned of planned demonstrations outside major government buildings in the coming days. All of this points to one simple truth. Britain has stepped into a new era where the monarchy is no longer just ceremonial. Charles has taken a gamble that the public will rally to him as a protector of democracy rather than condemn him as a meddler in politics. If he is right, the monarchy could emerge stronger and more relevant than at any time in living memory. If he is wrong, this decision could mark the beginning of its end. Either way, the next general election will now be a referendum not just on who governs Britain, but on whether the monarchy still has a place in modern public life. If was the explosion, what followed was the political aftershock, and it is still reverberating through every corner of Britain. Within hours of the King's proclamation, a full-blown election war room was set up by every major party. Campaign managers, data analysts, and spin doctors worked through the night as Britain's political map was torn wide open. This isn't just another snap election. This is being described by political historians as a sovereignty election, a once-in-a-century moment that will decide not only who governs Britain, but whether the monarchy itself survives. Keir Starmer has now confirmed he will remain Labour leader and fight the election personally, a move that has split his own party in two. Furious backbenchers accuse him of being out of touch with the public mood and warn that Labour could face a historic wipeout if they fail to distance themselves from the image of a government fired by the King. Reports from inside Labour HQ reveal shouting matches and resignations as senior advisors quit rather than be associated with what one source called a suicide mission. Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is said to have privately urged Starmer to focus the campaign on cost of living issues rather than attacking the King, a suggestion that has sparked fierce debate. Should Labour risk alienating monarchists, or should they gamble on framing the dissolution as an abuse of royal power? The party is divided, and the clock is ticking. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party senses a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Party insiders are already boasting that they could win a landslide if they successfully frame this as a patriotic reset, casting Labour as a party that betrayed the public. This is a gift from the King, one senior Tory strategist told Sky News. We will fight this election as the party of stability, the party that stood with the crown when it mattered most. Behind closed doors, Rishi Sunak has reportedly told his campaign team that the message will be simple. Charles acted. Now we must deliver. Tory social media ads are flooding platforms with slogans like Stand with the King and Restore Trust, Restore Britain. Reform UK, emboldened by Farage's relentless campaigning, is threatening to turn this election into a three-way dogfight. Polling conducted just this morning shows Reform surging to 22% nationally, their highest ever, with massive leads in key Northern and Midlands constituencies. This has spooked both Labour and Conservatives, who now face the prospect of losing dozens of seats to a populist insurgency riding the wave of anti-establishment anger. Some analysts are predicting a hung parliament, which would plunge Britain back into chaos just months after the King's intervention. The palace, still silent publicly, is reportedly deeply aware of the stakes. Courtiers are said to be working around the clock to prepare for every possible outcome, including scenarios where the election produces no clear winner and Charles is asked to play a decisive role again. This is exactly the kind of constitutional nightmare advisors hope to avoid, but with public opinion so volatile, it may be unavoidable. Polling shows an unprecedented 64% of voters say the King did the right thing by dissolving Parliament, but that support could evaporate if the election produces more instability. International pressure is also increasing. The European Union has called an emergency meeting to discuss the implications for trade negotiations, warning that Britain's political turmoil could delay ongoing talks. The White House is said to be quietly concerned about the potential for unrest, with intelligence reports suggesting that extremist groups on both the far right and far left are attempting to exploit the crisis. Security has been tightened around Buckingham Palace, and major government sites after online chatter hinted at plans to disrupt campaign events. Scotland Yard has deployed additional units to maintain order, fearing that a single spark could ignite nationwide protests. Financial markets continue to swing wildly. While some investors welcome the prospect of a fresh mandate, others fear prolonged uncertainty if no party wins outright. The pound, which initially bounced back after the King's announcement, is now fluctuating hour by hour. Business leaders are demanding that the election date be set as soon as possible to calm nerves, but insiders suggest the palace may wait several more days before announcing the official timetable, a delay designed to give parties time to organise, but which risks adding more fuel to the fire. Media coverage has gone into overdrive. Every major newspaper is running special editions, and rolling news coverage has dominated television schedules. Talk radio phone lines are jammed with callers debating whether Charles saved Britain or triggered its next great crisis. Influencers and YouTubers are releasing hourly updates, some openly cheering for a royalist revival, others warning that Britain is sliding toward constitutional authoritarianism. The split in public opinion is widening, and every party knows that whoever wins the messaging war in the next few weeks could control the narrative for decades to come. Perhaps most significantly, the monarchy itself is now the unspoken centrepiece of the coming election. Never before in modern British history has a monarch's decision become the central issue of a general election campaign. Some candidates are already openly declaring they will run on a pro-monarchy platform, while Republican activists see this as their chance to push for a referendum on abolishing the crown entirely. Pollsters warn that younger voters are more open than ever to the idea of a republic, but they also show surprising levels of respect for Charles's decisive action. This election may decide not only the government, but the very identity of Britain as a constitutional monarchy. As night falls over London, the atmosphere remains electric, tense, and unpredictable. Crowds are still gathered outside Parliament Square, singing the national anthem and waving flags, while smaller groups clash with police in protest. It feels as if Britain is living through a turning point, a moment that will be studied by historians for generations. Every decision made in the next few weeks, every speech, every headline, could tilt the balance between a stronger, more trusted democracy and a political system pushed to the brink. By the dawn of the next day, Britain had transformed into something resembling a nation on the brink of revolution. The King's decision had not only reset politics, but unleashed a tidal wave of emotions that no one, not even Charles himself, can fully control. Leaked reports from palace insiders suggest that the King barely slept last night, pacing the halls of Windsor Castle, reviewing documents and receiving constant updates from advisors. One source close to the royal household claims that Charles was presented with a secret intelligence briefing warning that the longer political uncertainty continues, the greater the risk of coordinated unrest across major UK cities. This has reportedly left the King deeply concerned about how quickly he can bring the country back to stability without appearing to manipulate the outcome of the election. Meanwhile, Westminster is behaving like a beehive that's just been kicked. Political leaders are holding frantic backroom meetings, trying to form coalitions and cut private deals before the election date is even announced. Leaks from Inside Number 10 suggest that Starmer is under immense pressure to soften his rhetoric against the monarchy. Several senior Labour MPs have reportedly warned him that an aggressive anti-royal campaign could doom Labour in its traditional heartlands, where respect for the crown still runs deep. At the same time, Conservative strategists are moving fast, preparing to frame any criticism of the King as unpatriotic. This is no longer just a campaign about policy, it is a culture war over who speaks for the soul of Britain. Farage has sensed the opening and is pressing the advantage. His campaign is using live streams, viral videos, and non-stop press appearances to paint the election as a chance to smash the Westminster cartel once and for all. Reform UK is now polling within striking distance of Labour in dozens of battleground constituencies, an outcome that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. Some political analysts are even speculating that Farage could emerge as kingmaker in a hung parliament scenario, potentially holding the balance of power, a twist that would throw Britain into yet another constitutional storm. Global reaction is intensifying. The United Nations has issued a carefully worded statement urging Britain to maintain democratic continuity, while financial institutions are warning of volatility if the election results in a weak government. The IMF has suggested that Britain's economic policy direction could be downgraded if there is no clear fiscal plan within 30 days of the new government forming. Even the Vatican has weighed in, with the Pope reportedly praying for wisdom for those who bear heavy responsibility. International media outlets are covering the crisis wall to wall, turning Charles into one of the most scrutinised leaders on the planet. In some Commonwealth nations, pro-Republican movements are suddenly energised, arguing that the King's intervention proves the monarchy still holds too much unchecked power. In others, monarchists are cheering, saying Charles has proven that a constitutional monarch can still act decisively to protect the people. The stakes could not be higher. The election date is expected to be announced within the next 48 hours, and campaign machinery is already shifting into overdrive. Posters are going up, slogans are being tested, and war chests are being opened. Billionaire donors are lining up behind their preferred candidates, seeing this as the most consequential vote in decades. The media is preparing for wall-to-wall coverage, and every network is promising special election programming. There is a palpable sense that Britain is about to choose not just a government, but a future, one in which the monarchy is either vindicated as a guardian of democracy or condemned as an outdated institution that meddled one time too many. Inside Buckingham Palace, the pressure is unbearable. Some of the King's closest courtiers are said to be warning him to stay silent until after the election to preserve royal neutrality. But younger advisors are reportedly urging Charles to deliver a national address, explaining his decision and calling for unity. The King's private secretary is believed to be drafting two versions of a potential speech, one conciliatory and one defiant, in case public sentiment begins to shift dramatically before the vote. This internal palace drama is adding yet another layer of suspense to an already combustible situation. On the streets, the atmosphere is one of both celebration and confrontation. Pro-Charles rallies have grown in size, with massive gatherings in Manchester, Leeds and Newcastle chanting "Thank you, King Charles," while anti-monarchy protesters vow to end the Crown's meddling. Police are bracing for a volatile few weeks ahead, with MI5 warning that extremist factions could attempt to exploit the chaos to incite violence. The Home Office has quietly authorised increased surveillance measures to monitor potential threats, a move civil liberties groups are already condemning as government overreach. And then came the leak that set Britain ablaze once again. A transcript of a private meeting between Charles and several constitutional scholars was leaked online late last night. The transcript, which has not been officially confirmed, appears to show the King expressing doubts about whether Starmer can credibly lead the nation through the current crisis. This revelation has sent shockwaves through the political establishment, with Labour accusing the palace of meddling in the campaign. Royal officials have refused to comment, neither confirming nor denying the leak, which has only fueled speculation and media frenzy. As Britain stands on the edge of an election that will rewrite its future, one question now dominates every conversation. Will this gamble pay off for King Charles, or has he set in motion events that could ultimately destroy the very institution he is trying to save? The countdown has begun, the stakes could not be higher, and every hour feels like history being written in real time. Whether Britain emerges from this stronger, more united, and with renewed faith in its democracy, or descends into deeper division and chaos will depend on what happens next. One thing is certain, this is no longer just an election. This is a national reckoning, and the outcome will echo through British history for generations.